Welcome, Spacefarers, to my Stellaris guide on Empire creation for Stellaris Utopia as of the 1.6 update. If anything in this guide changes, I will keep this guide up to date, so you can just come here, one-stop shop, for all your Stellaris Empire creation guide needs. So let's just get started, let's get right to it. Appearance doesn't really matter, pick something you like, these people look cool. Name also doesn't matter, name list doesn't matter, that's fine. On to traits. Traits are the first major part of Empire creation that is actually kind of important. So, at its core, Stellaris is a game about, realistically, minerals and research. You need minerals to build your ships, your stations, your buildings, like everything. And you need research to improve all of those things. So, to get your snowball really starting to roll and your empire really starting to roll, you need a lot of minerals and research. So with that being said, the best two traits, hands down, are industrious and intelligent. Like, just flat out, they are the best two. If you can get these, get them. If you can't, we'll go through them all. We'll go through them all so we can do it. So let's just start from the top. Agrarian, since 1.6, they've actually made food a lot better than it used to be. So that 15% extra food, it's not bad, but it's not great. Also, for 2 points, I wouldn't take it, as it's not quite all that useful. Thrifty is better than Agrarian, as you will be needing energy credits, and 15% is nothing to scoff at. I'd say it's worth the 2 points, but it is not nearly as good as Industrious. To get that 15% minerals, especially if you can take it right away, that's 15% minerals. You can get your ships up faster, you can get your stations up faster, you can get your buildings, like everything faster, and start your snowball like that. Intelligent, it's like probably, I'd say arguably the best one. Just 10% flat research. Amazing. It's just great. You can get your mining stations, your better weapons, jump drives, like everything faster. It's good. For 1 point, all of these natural engineers, natural physicists, and natural sociologists are great picks, depending on what type of empire, what type of like weapons or kind of style that you want to go for. Some of them are better than others, so if you're going for a bio-focused and doing like gene modification type stuff, sociologist is great. If you're doing like warp drive and like laser energy weapons, physicist is great. And if you want to do like kinetic or missile weapons and upgrade your mining stations and like everything, get your better mineral buildings, that's all in engineers. Extremely adaptive is the habitability. The plus 20% is great. I do not think that it's worth 4 points. It's like, it's great just to have that extra habitability, but for 4 points, that's pretty much all the points that you can possibly do. So not worth it. Adaptive, it's kind of worth it because it's only 2 points, but I'd still say that there are better 2 point traits like industrious or, intelligent. So you might as well get one of these. Non-adaptive, it's a -2, which is nice because it is like the only -2 trait. The habitability, it hurts. It hurts, especially early game. Later on you can kind of make it up, but I generally avoid this just because the -10 habitability hurts so much. But if you're really desperate for that extra point, trying to maximize your trait picks and points, you have to kind of go non-adaptive, unfortunately. Rapid Breeders is actually not that bad. There's better one-pick points, but it's nice if you want to just get up a bunch of planets and fill them up really fast. You're doing a lot of habitats, colonizing a bunch. It's pretty good. Slow Breeders, I'd say, isn't all that bad. It'll slow you down, definitely, but if you're going to be focusing on a smaller number of core planets, it's not all that bad. But if you're going to be mass expanding, colonizing a bunch, then I'd try to avoid it. Talented is situational. It's not all that useful if you're just going to be getting talented, but if you pair talented with like a meritocracy or something else that increases your leader's skill level so that you can start the game with a level 3 ruler or like leader, general, scientist, everything, it's super helpful. But that said, if you're not going to be going those other things, don't take Talented. Quick Learners, I'm just not a big fan of. Later on in the game, you'll be getting and starting with level 4-5 generals anyway, or like admirals, level 4-5 leaders, so you don't necessarily need this all that much. Slow Learners, it just hurts way too much to get it, so I'd avoid this if you can. Very Strong is interesting. The army damage, I'd say, like, yeah, it's 40%, but I have never in my hundreds of hours in Stellaris actually cared about army damage at all. Like, if you're bombing down the world and you need more armies, you just build more armies. Like, I'm never really that stressed for, like, oh shit, if I had 10% more army damage, man, something great could happen. I've never had that happen. The 10% minerals is good, but Industrious is 15% minerals for only 2 trait points. So why would I really get this? Strong is half as good as Very Strong, but a third of the cost. So Strong is better than Very Strong. Army damage, it's like, okay. The 5% minerals is nice if you want to just like really maximize that minerals. It's okay. Weak army damage, don't care about. The 5% minerals, like late game, that'll be a decent chunk of change. So I try to avoid weak if I can. Nomadic, I don't find all that good. I've never really played an Empire where I care about migration speed or resettlement cost. Like, you probably won't be resettling, like, huge numbers of population, so I never find that it's actually really good at all. Sedentary, on the other hand, is great for a negative trait, because if you don't care about migration speed and resettlement cost, which you really shouldn't, there's no point in not taking it, because it's just like, okay, here, free negative point. Okay, great. Communal, 5% happiness. It's good. It's happiness. Great. With how happiness works now, it's not all that super great. I'd still say there's better 1-pointers for sure. Solitary, minus 5% happiness. It's not something that you really want to take. With the new 1.6 changes to Charismatic, Ruler Opinion Impact plus 25. Okay, it's nice if you want to be getting some defensive packs and trade deals and federations going pretty early in the game, because that 25 will really help you. But I've never really found the need for it. Repugnant, on the other hand, okay, yeah, the minus 25 will definitely hurt you early game, but if you're not really planning to enter into these defensive packs, and you're not really planning to enter into these federations, then it's a pretty easy thing for you to pick up. Especially if you're going like fanatical purifiers or something like that. I've played and beat a hard game while not signing a single defensive pact, so I'd say like you can pretty comfortably take Repugnant if you know what you're doing. Conformist, Governing Ethics Attraction 25%. That it's so good, that Governing Ethics Attraction, but for 2 points, I'd honestly say that it's not necessarily worth it. If it was like 1 point for 15%, I'd say like, yeah, sure, but for 2 points, why would I take this over like Industrious, like ever, besides for like a flavor kind of thing? Deviants, I wouldn't take. Governing Ethics Attraction, just having more factions that, especially now, just with how they work, you can have factions that are so mutually exclusive, where one of them is pissed off if you're in a federation, and one of them wants you to be in a federation, that it'll really just fuck your happiness in the long run. So I would try to avoid Deviants if I could. Venerable, super interesting to get that leader lifespan, but at the same time, it is nowhere near worth those 4 points, because that's just way too much. Enduring, I think, is slightly undervalued by most people, because that leader lifespan plus 15, especially early on, can be really, really beneficial. So if you get a leader at 30 years old and they die around just after 70, so you have 40 years of usable life. If you add an extra 15 onto that, that's a sizable chunk of their life that they are now alive. So with that, I'll have more time at a max level leader to do like govern my sector, to govern my planet, to lead my armies or navy, to research, like, those high-level anomalies and, like, special projects. Also, since your leaders just last longer, you don't have to spend all that much influence on recruiting new ones. So that extra influence can go towards building habitats, colonizing planets, building frontier outposts. I'd say that Enduring, if you're going to take a 1 point and you're looking for, like, just something, nothing else is really speaking to you, take Enduring, it's good. Fleeting, just don't take it. Like, you're shortening your lifespan. Like, your first set of leaders will, like, they won't even hit, like, level 5. Like, they'll just die. It'll cost you way too much influence. I'd avoid this. Decadent, if you're going slaves, take it, because it's free, basically, because you'll always have slaves. If you're not going decadent, never take this, because you won't have slaves, so it's just a minus 10 happiness penalty. Makes no sense. Resilient is garbage. Like, it's just flat out garbage. I like garrison health plus 100% and fortification defensive bonus. The only way that resilient is good is if you are planning to lose and you want to lose slightly slower. What? Like, yeah, that makes no sense. Because if your planets are getting bombed, you're already kind of losing. Like, yeah, it'll happen occasionally in a war, but not nearly enough to make up for a trait pick. Conservationist is super good, but it only becomes super good late game where your consumer good cost is, like, super high. Like, once you have, like, 500 plus pops, then it starts to become, like, super worth it. Before then, I'd say it's not all that great, because 25% of, like, nothing is nothing. But once you get up to your consumer goods costing you, like, 200-300, that 20% is a sizable chunk of it. Wasteful, it doesn't mean anything early game, because you don't have any consumer goods to really do, but late game, that's a huge, like, 20% modifier that'll just hurt you out the ass. Now, with all of these, once you get far enough down a tech tree and an ascension path, you can go for robotics, at which point your species is robotic, so, like, these don't matter at all. Or you can gene mod and go for a biological ascension, in which case you can edit out the negative ones. So keep that in mind, because certain things, like, I might take wasteful if I'm going for a very quick gene modification build, so I can just get rid of it, like, once the second I can, and I won't necessarily have enough population that I'll really be all that harmed from it. So that's just something to keep in mind, that it will take you, like, 50, 100, if not longer years before you can edit out some of these negative traits, but it's definitely there, so keep that in mind. Ruler doesn't matter at all, really. Name and class, I like Desert Worlds. So that's that. I like Arthropoid Cities because they look cool. Ethics, the other one that kind of matters. So let's start off with the middle. Hive Mind. Hive Minds, honestly, right now are not in a super good place. I think that with Utopia, when they put in Hive Minds, it's a great idea, but I don't think they're well fleshed out. So many of the events that have like ethics, attraction, or divergence, or like happiness bonuses don't apply to Hive Minds. It just feels really weird playing a Hive Mind. Like, it doesn't feel like it's like it's all there. So I'd say that definitely Hive Minds right now are in kind of like a beta state compared to the other ethics. But if you want to do a Hive Mind, they're fun, but it's weird. I'll just leave it at that. But you do get some nice bonuses, such as this monthly influence, monthly unity is great, habitability, growth speed. So if you compare that with your trait picks that really synchronize well with that, like getting some more habitability, growth speed, unity, stuff like that, it's pretty good. But let's start with the top, militarist. So full orbital bombardment, so you can bomb down worlds in war faster, and you can take more because you have reduced war demand cost. Great, super good. The army damage we don't care about from either of these, and the fire rate is 10 and 20%. That's nothing to scoff at, so that's like your navy's just like stronger. Okay, great. Xenophobe, if you're going to go xenophobe, it has some neat civics that you can take only if you're xenophobic. You can enslave aliens, so you kind of want to a degree. Like if you have the option to enslave, you might as well use it. Other than that, like rivalry influence gain, okay, great, you get some more influence, and border range plus 15 and plus 30%, which is huge. So if you don't really give a shit about diplomacy or what anyone thinks of you, like take repugnant, go fanatic xenophobe, and just like wipe everyone out. It's a solid build. Egalitarian, I like. You cannot use autocratic, which, okay, whatever. Utopian living standard, so you're going to pay for some more consumer goods, but you'll have more happiness in exchange. So if you're going egalitarian, like, don't take wasteful, like, take conservationist and things that reduce your consumer good cost, and you'll be good. Faction influence gain, so you'll have bigger factions that give you some more influence, but your consumer good cost will be decreased, so you can have the utopian living standards, but not really pay as much, what's it called? Consumer goods. You won't have to pay as much consumer goods for that benefit of extra happiness. Materialist is super good robot maintenance costs and research speed. If you're going materialist, you pretty much have to go robotics. There's no real other reason to take it. Getting that robot maintenance cost and that research speed, like the research speed alone makes it great, but then the robot maintenance cost is like, okay, because most of your pops will be robotic at some point, if not all of them. Pacifist, I like the bonuses of Pacifist, like in terms of monthly unity and core sector systems. The core sector systems I'm not like the biggest fan of, but the unity is huge, like plus 40% unity. That's crazy. You can get your traditions like out the door like super fast. I don't like that you can only do defensive wars only, and you can't do unrestricted wars with this. So if you're going like basic pacifist, you can do liberate in terms of wars, but for fanatic pacifist, you can only do defensive wars, so you can't even do liberate. So if you want to be like a really kind of insular, building up tall as opposed to wide, like you don't want to do any of the combat war, like enter into a federation, okay, fanatic pacifist, great choice. I don't find it all that interesting because you can't really take anything, so that's just my thoughts on it. Xenophile, okay, increased opinion. Some other things that we don't really care about too much. Trust growth and diplomatic influence cost. So this is super good if you want a game where you're getting into a lot of early defensive packs, non-aggression packs, making a federation, trade deals, everything. This is super great for that. If you want that type of game, then by all means get Xenophile. It's really good for that. Authoritarian, if you're going authoritarian, you pretty much have to go slaves. You have the caste system, which is a bit weird, but it's okay. And the slave unrest is really like the main thing. So you're going to have slaves, so you probably should take decadent in your traits, and you should have slaves, because if you're not, well, the slave unrest and half of the benefit of this freaking ethics system is completely lost on you. So go that. The resettlement cost is, like, I don't really care about it. I think that this is maybe one of the weaker of the ethics, just because you have to have slaves and resettlement cost isn't all that super great, but that's just me. Spiritualists, you can go psionic, so if you want to do a psionic ascension, like Breach the Shroud, stuff like that, this is the one that you kind of have to take. You get temples, you get unrest, which I really don't care all that much about unrest. But you get this governing ethics attraction, which is super nice because that means that your populace will not have as many crazy factions, or they won't be as big, so when you inevitably piss them off by, playing the game, it won't be as bad. So fanatic spiritualist, you see, this spiritualist pairs really well with egalitarian because they have faction influence gain, and this is governing ethics attraction, so you'll have bigger, more unified factions, which is that. Onto authority, hive mind, imperial, so it's like a monarchy. Dictatorship, you have pretty much, it's very similar, honestly. The only real two that are different are oligarchic, so you hold a new election every 40 to 50 years to select a new ruler. So you're going to have your main ruler for longer, which is always kind of nice if they're good. But then if you're going democratic, you have your ruler for less time, so it's a bit more flexible in terms of who's in charge, depending on what you need. But also that each one of these will have a certain mandate when they get elected, and if you complete their mandate, which is like build 4 research stations or mining stations or something like that, they will give you a bunch of influence, and that extra influence is always nice. So, something to consider. I personally like oligarchic, but that's just me. It's just because of the stability without having to deal with elections. That's me. On to civics. Meritocracy. Meritocracy is pretty, like, it's not great by itself, but if you're going meritocracy and your main species is talented, you start with a level 3 leaders, and that's crazy good. Especially if you put, like, venerable and stuff like that onto them, so they live a long time as well. Meritocracy is super great. Police state I'd never get. Unrest -20, don't care. I mean, maybe if you're going a slave build and you have a bunch of unrest, then it's useful. Okay. Environmentalist, this isn't good early game, but it's better late game. So with the 1.6 patch, they moved the Empire Capital Complex and being able to add an extra civic to your government much further down the tech tree, which it changes some stuff up, but at the same time, you know that mid to late game, you'll be able to change your civics. So keep that in mind when you're picking them, because you should be picking for the early and mid game at the start, because you know you can completely change your civics towards the end game as of 1.6. So I wouldn't take environmentalist at the start, but once I reform my government, I definitely would, because that's when I'd actually have enough population that the -20 consumer good cost would be huge. Cutthroat politics, monthly influence, it's always kind of good. If you need more influence, grab it. Corporate dominion, empire, energy generation, great. Just 10% flat, great to have late game. Shadow Council, election influence cost. If you're influencing a bunch of elections, it's always useful. I don't seem to really have much problems in terms of managing my influence and being able to affect an election if I really need to, so I tend to avoid this one, but sometimes it's nice. Mining guilds, 10% empire minerals. Late game, you definitely want this, because it's just 10% more minerals, and you need that for your fleet. Efficient bureaucracy is useful, I'd say, early-ish game, when, okay, being able to have 5 core sector systems as opposed to 3 is actually useful. Later on, I don't think it's all that great. I mean, the sector AI still needs a whole ton of work on it, but I tend to not get this, but it's definitely something that you could use if that's what you want, to be, like, just don't even bother with sectors and just have it all be you. Like, if you're going, like, fanatic pacifist and you want, like, an extra, like, 6 core sector systems, great, take it. Functional architecture is super good early game, gets a 15% build cost. I usually pair this with mining guilds, which is also good because everything ramps off minerals. So I usually tend to end up taking mining guilds and functional architecture first, because build cost minerals is really all you need to get really big. Aristocratic elite, I tried this one on going a very ruler-focused and leader-focused build. I took aristocratic elite when I took meritocracy as well. So I had really great leaders, and the governors cost less, and I could have more of them. And I just put leaders on, like, all of my planets, and it was super good. But if you're not going a build like that, then I'd avoid this. Syncretic evolution is interesting if you're going for a slave build and you want a base slave species, take it. Late game, I don't think that there's actually, like, a point of having this, because it's just at the start of the game. So, yeah, get rid of it when you reform your government. Imperial Cult, Edict cost, -33%. Nice, but not all that great. Beacon of Liberty, monthly unity is fantastic. If I can, try and take this, unless you're really stuck between grabbing, like, a bunch of good things. Exalted Priesthood is always good for governing ethics attraction. So like, right, if you're going like spiritualist and you have governing ethic attraction and you're going priesthood and you're going egalitarian, like, okay, yeah, just take that. Just to have like those really big, like singular, like we are one, like get one vision as well for your ascension. Like, it's good. Philosopher King, having ruler skill level +2, that's crazy. Like, being able to, without even taking, like, meritocracy or talented, you can have a level 3 ruler. But if you take both of them, you can have a level 5 ruler off the bat. That's crazy. So, if you're into that kind of leader build, then take this. If not, ignore it. Citizen service, 15% Navy cap. Great. If you're being a little bit militarist, great. Take it. It's good. It's better late game than early game, when a 15% fleet cap is like 2 ships, but late game when 15% of 1,000 is 150, it's really good. Technocracy, I like early game, because being able to change from 3 research alternatives to 4 early game when you're trying to get and snag those really super valuable techs that you need right off the bat, it's great. As you get later into the game, when you've already done the research alternative research, so you by that point have 4, and now since you have this Civic, you have 5, I don't think that it's all that great. So I usually drop it when I'm redoing my government, if I get it in the beginning. Idealistic Foundation, 5% happiness is like, it's nice, but I'd say that there's better things to put your point into. Slaver Guilds is super good if you have slaves. If you don't, there's no point in taking this. Inward Perfection, Monthly Unity. If you're pacifist and xenophobe, like, take it, because 30% unity, that's crazy. Like, that's crazy, because you'll already have 20%, and then you have another freaking 30%. Like, you'll be pumping out unity super fast. Once I hit the ability to reform my government, I'll usually drop this off, because really the only, like, the first 4 or 5 traditions are really useful, and after that, they're more of just, like, I'm filling out my tradition tree. So usually I drop it after that point. Warrior Culture, army stuff, don't care. Distinguished Admiralty, 8% fire rate is good. I'd say that there's better ones on this list, but 8% still nice if you want to be, like, aggressive early game, and, like, it's good. But there's better things. Migration Attraction is interesting. One of my friends, he runs a pacifist build where he goes, like, super pacifist, and he just wants Migration Attraction to get a bunch of species in, and then he plays around with them and, like, gene mods them to, like, fit all, like, his planet types and everything, and it's super useful. If you're doing something like that, take it. If not, don't. Because it's an interesting buff, but it's super situational. Agrarian Idol, so good early. Like, you start with, like, I think 3 unity at the beginning of the game per month. If you have Agrarian Idol, you're easily pushing 6, which is like, okay, it's only 3 difference, but it's like, it's double. If you think about it, it's double the unity early game, so you're getting your first traditions done, like ASAP. So take it. Later on, get rid of it, because you don't really need the extra unity. Faction influence gain, it's nice if you're going, like, egalitarian and you want more faction influence gain. If not, ignore it. Nationalistic zeal, I'd say is actually pretty good, because getting that 10% border range off the bat means you can have more worlds in your sphere, and it's 10%, it helps out. And then the extra rivalry means that you can get more influence, so you have more things to colonize and stuff like that. Mechanist, I honestly don't think that it's super great. As, okay, yeah, you start with 4 robot pops, and, like, really, it's robot maintenance reduced by 5. If you really want to start with robots early, like, right away, like, okay, I'd say that there's definitely better picks, but I'd ignore it, and at least, like, by the time you reform your government, like, get rid of this, because it's really only 5% robot maintenance cost. It's, like, pretty much worthless when you're reforming your government. Fanatical Purifiers, if you're going for that type of build, like, fuck diplomacy, fuck everyone else, I just want to kill them all, take Fanatical Purifiers, because it's so good. It's just so good. And then the other traits, which are pretty much the same as the other ones, but just like for the hive mind, it's like, yeah, research alternatives, consumer good cost, monthly unity is good, like, army damage don't care about, monthly influence is also D's, pooled knowledge, so if you're going like a leader build, and devouring a swarm, which is basically the same as fanatical purifiers, but just the hive mind equivalent of it. So if you want to be like the Zerg that just wipes everyone out, then you can. Other than that, we're pretty much done. Starting weapons doesn't really matter all that much. Energy weapons are physics-based, while the other two are engineering, so keep that in mind if you're taking, like, one of the natural, like, physicists or something like that, for your starting weapons. And FTL method is, I prefer warp. It says new players, but I'd say that it's, like, it's probably the best. Like, it works as you think it would work. It's just standard, it's good. Wormhole, I also think is pretty good, because you just build your wormhole station, and you just get that bubble, and you warp to it. Hyperspace, I don't like, just because you're so confined with how the hyperspace lanes are drawn, and if they're not drawn, like, super well, like, it's really easy for you to get screwed over by hyperspace travel. If everyone is going hyperspace, like, if that's kind of, like, the game that you're setting up, then hyperspace is super interesting, because it makes the game play a bit more like EU4 and stuff like that, because you now have, like, choke points and stuff like that. But I wouldn't take hyperspace if I was just going alone. I'd take warp or wormhole, depending on what I felt like at the time. And ship appearance doesn't matter. And with that, that is the Empire Creation Guide. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you guys learned something. If you did, feel free to like, subscribe, share, do whatever. Tell me in the comments down below. If you didn't, yeah, tell me why. Tell me how I can make it better. Disagree, agree, like, just leave it all in the comments down below. I hope this helped you, and have fun in Stellaris, guys. See ya.